I had tried to call him that afternoon and it rang a couple of times and then cut off. So I just assumed that maybe he was doing an interview because if he's live on air, that's usually what he'll do. And then I got a text message from a friend who said, "Is it true that Sammy's been abducted by ICE?" So I said, I mean, my heart dropped instantly. Like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? So I immediately called his agent and he confirmed it. And I managed to speak to Sammy for the first time yesterday and he told me that they wouldn't allow him to tell anyone that he was about to be taken, and he really had to plead with them, and they said, well, okay, you can send a text message. So he sent a text message to the head of care in California, one of the senior figures of care, Hossam Ailouche, and it was one of the ICE officers who hung me up, actually. Sammy said, "That's my wife calling. Can I just pick up and tell her what's going on?" He said no, and he hung up and switched off the phone. And it feels really unfair because Sammy hasn't done anything wrong. He was there on a valid visa. His visa hasn't expired. It wasn't due to expire. He'd already been allowed to enter the country. He was taking a domestic flight. So he was already allowed in a few days before that. And I really truly think, and actually I think most people will agree, that he has been targeted because he's been speaking up for Palestinian rights.
What were your first thoughts when you realised that he had been detained and the reasons?
We kind of were worried. You know, we've been watching what's been happening this year in the United States, and we've seen that people with pro-Palestinian platforms have been detained. If you look at the case of Mahmoud Khalil, it's probably one of the most high-profile cases. And Sammy's profile has risen considerably because he's such an effective speaker. He truly believes in human rights. He truly believes in you know, there shouldn't be any hatred towards Muslims or Jews or Christians or anyone of any faith. He really believes that with everything that he does. And so he's gaining rising popularity has put him on the radar of some really unsavoury far-right influences. And he was atted by them a few days before this happened, and he did mention it to me, and we were concerned. The United States government has not provided a reason as to why they're detaining him. Now, they're saying that his visa was revoked, possibly a couple of days before on the Friday, and this happened on the Sunday, but they didn't inform him, and he only found out when an ICE officer told him, your visa's been revoked, so you've got to come back with us.
Well, as regards the reason for Sammy's detention given by the US State Department is that, and I quote, "those who support terrorism and undermine American national security will not be allowed to work or visit this country."
It's outrageous. It's completely outrageous and baseless. Sammy's been criticising a foreign government. He hasn't been criticising the United States. He's been criticising Israel.
The State Department also posted a video of your husband speaking after the October the 7th attacks. And we don't have the full context of the comments, that is true, but he's heard asking members of the audience whether they felt euphoria. And the actual clip says, "How many of you feel it in your hearts when you got the news that it happened? How many of you felt euphoria?" What are your thoughts on the suggestion that that is inciting violence and it is a terrorist statement to make?
This clip that you're referring to, Gillian, is a selection of clips that have been spliced and then fit together and presented as one video. He's on record on the Thinking Muslim podcast shortly after the October 7th attacks saying, "We do not support or celebrate bloodshed or bloodlust. We do not celebrate death. We do not celebrate war."
What do you want to see happen next? Have you appealed for help from the British government?
Yes, I immediately filed a case with the Foreign Commonwealth Office. If I'm being completely honest, Gillian, they haven't been much help. What they've been able to tell me is that they don't know very much. They've told me that the US authorities are refusing to give them the reason as to why he's being detained, because he is being detained. Sammy's more than happy to come home. You know, he'd happily get on the next flight. Why are they keeping him there? If his visa's been revoked, let him come. What's the problem? He's a British citizen. His family are all here.
Your message to the US authorities?
The United States prides itself on its First Amendment. The right to freedom of speech, the right to freedom of political expression. This is enshrined and is the most valued right that the United States, and I think even the United Kingdom as their ally, we both share this in common. And what we're seeing is really worrying. And I think the United States needs to just let Sammy go and recognise that they have made a huge error here because he hasn't done anything wrong. He's not guilty of any crime. all he's done is speak up in support of Palestinian rights, which, if I may add, is even more important today.
Well, in a statement, Department of Homeland Security spokesperson Tricia McLaughlin says following the October the 7th terror attack, Sami Hamdi cheered on Hamas. Under President Trump, those who support terrorism and undermine American national security will not be allowed to work or visit this country. That's just common sense.